The first contact. Captain Alexandra Reeves stood at the edge of the observation deck, her eyes fixed on the crimson horizon of Nova Terra. The setting sun cast long shadows across the military outpost's perimeter, where her companion, Ghost, patrolled with mechanical precision. The white-furred wolf was more than just an enhanced animal, he represented humanity's advancement in bioengineering, a perfect blend of natural instinct and artificial intelligence. The war with the Kraxen had stretched across 3 decades, leaving both species exhausted and bitter. The reptilian race's initial attempt to colonize human territories had sparked a conflict that neither side had truly wanted, but pride and fear had sustained it far longer than necessary. Ghost's sudden alert posture caught Alexandra's attention. The wolf's neural implants pulsed with a soft blue glow as he processed information through his enhanced senses. "What is it, boy?" she asked, reaching for her pulse rifle. The wolf's response came through their neural link, multiple heat signatures, approximately 2 kilometers east, moving erratically. Protocol demanded immediate reporting to command, but something about Ghost's behavior gave her pause. The wolf wasn't displaying his usual aggressive response to Kraxen signatures. Instead, his posture suggested curiosity, even concern. "Show me," she commanded, and Ghost projected a thermal overlay through their shared neural interface. The signatures were indeed Kraxen, but they were scattered, disorganized, not the typical militant formation. One signature, in particular, caught her attention. It was fading. Alexandra made a decision that would alter the course of history. "Command, this is Captain Reeves. Conducting routine patrol of the eastern sector. Nothing to report." The lie felt heavy on her tongue, but something deeper than military protocol was driving her actions now. She and Ghost moved silently through the tall purple grass native to Nova Terra. The wolf's enhanced muscles allowed him to move with preternatural grace, while Alexandra's own military-grade augmentations kept her movements equally fluid. As they approached the coordinates, the scene became clear: a crashed Kraxen scout ship, its hull torn open by what appeared to be internal explosions. The surviving Kraxen were young, barely warriors by their standards. They huddled around their fallen leader, their scales dulled by fear and exhaustion. The leader's wounds were severe, likely from protecting their vessel's reactor core during the crash. One of the young Kraxen spotted them and raised a weapon, hands trembling. Alexandra could have eliminated them all in seconds, her augmentations and Ghost's capabilities made that a certainty. Instead, she slowly lowered her rifle and raised her free hand. "We're not here to fight," she said, knowing their universal translators would convey her meaning. Ghost sat beside her, his posture relaxed but alert. The wounded leader stirred, speaking in their characteristic Hisklik language. Why show mercy?" The question carried decades of hatred and mistrust. Alexandra looked at the young faces around her, then at Ghost, who had already begun approaching the wounded leader with medical sensors activated. "Because someone has to take the first step," she replied. "And today, that's us." Over the next several hours, Alexandra used her field medical training while Ghost's advanced systems helped stabilize the Kraxen leader, whom she learned was named Zextal. The young crew watched in amazement as human and wolf worked in perfect synchronization to save their commander. "Our ship," Zextal explained between treatments, "was part of a peace delegation. Extremists among our own people sabotaged us. They would rather see the war continue." Alexandra's hands stilled for a moment. "We have those too," she admitted. "On both sides, there are those who profit from our conflict." As dawn approached, Alexandra faced a decision. The Kraxen crew couldn't stay here, they would be discovered. But they also couldn't return to their own lines in their current condition. Their ship's distress beacon would soon bring investigators from both sides. "There's an abandoned research station in the mountains," she said finally. "Ghost and I can get you there. It's not much, but it's defensible, and it has medical supplies." Zextal's copper eyes studied her. "Why risk so much for enemies?" Alexandra helped the Kraxen leader to stand. Maybe it's time we stopped being enemies. Ghost, plot us a course through the sensor dead zones. As they began their careful journey through the dawn light, Alexandra felt the weight of her choices. She had just violated multiple protocols, risked her career, and possibly committed treason in the eyes of hardliners. But watching Ghost guide the young Craxon with the same dedication he showed to her, she knew this was right. This wasn't just about saving lives anymore. This was about showing that another way was possible. As the first rays of Nova Terra's sun painted the sky in brilliant shades of red and gold, Alexandra Reeves led her unlikely group toward the mountains, knowing that every step took them further from the old world of hatred and closer to the possibility of something new. What she didn't know then was that this small act of mercy would spark a chain of events that would reshape the relationship between humans and Craxon forever. The real challenge wasn't in making this choice, it was in dealing with what would come next. The child's play. Dev Sharma was in the middle of building a castle out of mismatched Lego pieces when his mother received the call that would change everything. At 12 years old, he had already earned a reputation at school for seeing things differently. His teachers called it neurodivergent thinking. Dev just called it playing. But why do the pieces have to match? He would ask when other kids pointed out that his Lego buildings used blocks of different colors and sizes. The real pattern isn't in how they look. It's in how they feel when you put them together. Now, sitting in the pristine white conference room of the Quantum Archive, Dev was asking similar questions about the holographic display floating before him. Dr. Maya Patel watched with fascination as the boy tilted his head at impossible angles, squinting at the streams of alien data that had stumped the world's most advanced AI systems. "It's like music," Dev said suddenly, breaking the tense silence. "But you're all trying to read it instead of listen to it." Nexus 9's form rippled with interest. The Zethari had been observing Dev for the past hour, their crystalline forms casting rainbow patterns across the walls. "Explain," the alien being requested. Dev stood up, walking around the hologram. "See these parts that keep repeating? They're not words or numbers. They're like beats. Like when my dad plays his tabla drums. The pattern isn't in each beat, it's in the spaces between them." Maya exchanged glances with Professor James Martinez, the quantum computing expert who had spent months trying to decode the Zethari archive. The professor's skepticism was evident, but there was also a glimmer of curiosity in his eyes. "The boy might be onto something," James admitted. "We've been analyzing the data structure as a linear sequence, but what if it's meant to be processed rhythmically?" Dev wasn't listening to the adults anymore. He had pulled out his tablet and opened his favorite music creation app. "Can I connect this to your big computer?" he asked Maya. Before she could respond, Nexus 9 had already established a connection between Dev's tablet and the archive's quantum interface. The boy's fingers flew across the screen, and suddenly the conference room was filled with a strange, pulsing melody. "Look," Dev pointed excitedly at the hologram. "The lights are dancing." The streams of alien data had indeed begun to move, shifting and flowing in sync with Dev's improvised rhythm. The Zethari observers began to pulse with heightened energy, their forms becoming more agitated. "Impossible," one of them commented, its thoughts echoing in everyone's minds. "The boy has activated a dormant synchronization protocol we didn't even know existed." Maya watched in amazement as patterns began emerging in the data stream. What had appeared as random noise just moments ago was transforming into something structured, yet organic. Dev continued to adjust his musical sequence, adding layers of complexity that somehow made the patterns clearer rather than more confused. "It's like a really big game," Dev explained, not looking up from his tablet. "All these fancy computers are trying to solve the puzzle by following the rules, but nobody stopped to ask if the rules were part of the puzzle too." Professor Martinez had pulled up his own interface, frantically taking notes as Dev worked. "The boy is treating the entire archive as a single dynamic system," he muttered. "Not as discrete data points, but as a living, breathing entity that responds to rhythmic input. It's brilliant in its simplicity." The Zethari were now arranging themselves in complex geometric patterns around the room, their forms synchronizing with Dev's musical interpretation of their ancient data. Nexus 9 approached the boy, its crystalline structure emanating what could only be described as joy. Young Dev Sharma, the alien being spoke, you have done what our most advanced systems could not. You played with our history, and in doing so, you began to unlock it. Dev finally looked up from his tablet, grinning. Does this mean I can skip my math test tomorrow? The tension in the room broke as laughter rippled through the human observers. Even the Zethari pulsed with what seemed to be amusement, their forms creating delicate patterns that mimicked the sound waves of human chuckles. Maya stepped forward, placing a hand on Dev's shoulder. This is just the beginning, isn't it? The archive isn't just responding to the music, it's teaching us how to interact with it. Correct, Nexus 9 confirmed. What we perceived as corruption was actually an elaborate safeguard. The archive was designed to be accessible only to minds that could approach it with creativity and intuition. Minds that could play. Dev had already returned to his tablet, experimenting with different rhythms and watching how they affected the data streams. It's like the archive is dancing with us, he observed. Each civilization probably added their own dance moves. That's why you couldn't read it anymore, you forgot how to dance. The profound simplicity of Dev's observation struck Maya like a physical force. The Zethari, in their pursuit of computational perfection, had lost the ability to improvise, to play, to dance with uncertainty. They had evolved beyond the very qualities that had made their ancestors capable of creating such a magnificent archive in the first place. As the day drew to a close, Dev had successfully mapped several major patterns in the archive structure, each corresponding to a different musical rhythm. But more importantly, he had demonstrated that the key to unlocking humanity's greatest technological challenge lay not in complex algorithms or quantum computations, but in the simple, playful mind of a child who saw music in mathematics and dance in data. Digital Babel. The Zethari High Council's arrival transformed the night sky into a cascade of crystalline light. 7 massive ships, each larger than the first, arranged themselves in a perfect heptagon above the quantum archive. Dr. Maya Patel stood beside Dev Sharma, watching as the boy conducted another session with the alien database using nothing but his tablet and imagination. They still don't get it, Dev said, not looking up from his work. They keep trying to make it complicated. He wasn't wrong. In the week since his breakthrough, the facility had been flooded with the galaxy's most advanced beings. Quantum consciousness collectives, silicon-based superminds, and even beings of pure energy had arrived to witness what they called the human anomaly. Each brought their own theories about how a child had achieved what their civilizations couldn't. Professor Martinez burst into the room, his usual composure shattered by excitement. The preliminary results are in, he announced, projecting a holographic display. Dev's musical interface isn't just decoding the archive, it's revealing layers we never knew existed. Maya studied the projection, watching as complex patterns emerged from what they had previously thought was background noise. It's like we're finally learning to read between the lines, she mused. More like learning to dance between the lines, Dev corrected, adding a new rhythm to his musical sequence. The holographic data responded immediately, shifting and flowing like a living thing. The chamber doors dissolved in a shower of light as the Zethari High Council entered. Unlike Nexus 9's relatively simple form, the council members were vast, intricate structures of light and crystal, each one a symphony of geometric perfection. Their presence filled the room with a tangible sense of age and power. We have analyzed the child's methodology, the first speaker announced, its thoughts resonating directly in their minds. Yet we cannot replicate his results. Our attempts to quantify his musical patterns have failed. Dev finally looked up from his tablet, tilting his head at the towering crystalline beings. That's because you're trying to count the notes, he said. But music isn't about counting. It's about feeling. The council members shifted, their forms creating complex patterns that the facility's sensors interpreted as signs of distress. Feeling is imprecise, another council member stated. It cannot be standardized or replicated with perfect accuracy. Exactly. Dev exclaimed, jumping up from his chair. That's why it works. Look, he pulled up a new interface on his tablet, one he had designed himself. Every civilization that added to the archive did it their own way. They weren't trying to be perfect, they were trying to be themselves. Maya watched as Dev demonstrated, playing different rhythmic sequences that caused distinct sections of the archive to respond. Each pattern seemed to reflect the unique characteristics of the civilization that had created it. Some were rigid and mathematical, others fluid and organic, but all were bound together by the underlying rhythm of the archive itself. It's like a giant conversation, Dev explained, his fingers dancing across the screen. Each civilization added their own voice, their own song. But you can only hear it if you're willing to listen to all the voices at once, even the ones that sound wrong at first. The first speaker moved closer, its crystalline structure casting rainbow patterns across Dev's tablet. We have forgotten how to listen imperfectly, it admitted. Our evolution toward perfect computation has become our limitation. Professor Martinez stepped forward, his scientific skepticism warring with the evidence before him. The archive isn't just a database, he realized. It's a test. A way to ensure that only civilizations that maintain their capacity for creativity and intuition can access its knowledge. A safeguard against the pattern we observed across multiple species, another council member added. The tendency for advanced civilizations to sacrifice creativity for computational perfection. Dev had returned to his tablet, but now he was doing something new. Instead of playing with the archive's existing patterns, he was creating his own. The holographic display erupted in a dance of light and color as human music began to weave itself into the ancient alien database. What are you doing? Maya asked, though she already suspected the answer. Adding Earth's voice to the conversation, Dev replied with a grin. The archive feels empty without it. The Zethari Council watched in collective amazement as Dev's simple human music seamlessly integrated with their million-year-old database. The boy hadn't just decoded their history, he had made humanity part of it. We understand now, the first speaker declared, its form pulsing with what might have been humility. The archive was never meant to be perfect. It was meant to be alive. Maya observed as more patterns emerged from Dev's work, each one revealing new aspects of the civilizations that had contributed to the archive. It's not just about storing information, she realized. It's about preserving the essence of each species, their creativity, their unique way of seeing the universe. Their imperfections, Dev added, still focused on his musical creation. That's what makes it beautiful. As the day progressed, representatives from other advanced civilizations began to arrive, drawn by news of the breakthrough. Each brought their own perspectives, their own attempts to understand how a human child had succeeded where their perfect systems had failed. But Dev just kept playing, adding layer upon layer to his cosmic symphony, teaching the universe's most advanced beings how to listen with imperfect ears and see with imperfect eyes. In his hands, the greatest repository of knowledge in the galaxy had become something more, a bridge between perfection and possibility, between computation and creativity, between what was and what could be. The language of wonder. The quantum archive had become a symphony of chaos. 3 months after Dev's breakthrough, children from every corner of Earth had been invited to participate in what the media dubbed the Galactic Orchestra. Maya watched from her office as 40 young minds, each bringing their own cultural perspective, worked to unlock more sections of the ancient database. Amara, a young girl from Nigeria, had discovered that traditional African drumming patterns could access archives from civilizations that had evolved in binary star systems. Kai, a boy from Japan, used the rhythms of taiko drums to communicate with data structures created by plasma-based life forms. Each child brought something unique, something perfectly imperfect, to the cosmic conversation. They're rewriting the universal language of information, Professor Martinez observed, standing beside Maya. The quantum computing expert had abandoned his traditional research methods, now spending his days studying how children interpreted alien data through music and movement. Dev had become something of a conductor, helping other children find their own ways to communicate with the archive. Everyone has their own song, he explained to a group of visiting alien dignitaries. You just have to help them find it. The Zethari Council had remained on Earth, their crystalline forms now permanent fixtures in the facility. They watched with what could only be described as wonder as human children dismantled millions of years of computational theory through the simple act of play. We've detected something unprecedented, Nexus 9 announced one morning, its form shimmering with excitement. The archive is growing. Maya rushed to the main chamber, where Dev and several other children were working with a newly discovered section of data. The holographic display showed patterns they had never seen before, new rhythms, new harmonies, emerging from the interaction between human creativity and alien knowledge. It's not just storing information anymore, Dev said, his fingers dancing across his tablet. It's learning from us, just like we're learning from it. The implications were staggering. The archive, designed millions of years ago by civilizations long vanished, was adapting to incorporate human methods of understanding. It was evolving. This was the true purpose, the first speaker of the Zethari Council declared. Not to preserve knowledge, but to ensure it continues to grow through the introduction of new perspectives. The discovery sparked a revolution in how advanced civilizations approached information storage and processing. The Quantum Intelligence Collective, a society of artificial minds that had achieved computational perfection eons ago, began experimenting with introducing controlled imperfections into their systems. The silicon sages of Tau Ceti started incorporating musical patterns into their quantum algorithms. But perhaps the most profound change was happening on Earth. Schools around the world began adopting what they called the Dev Protocol, teaching children to approach problems through creative play rather than rigid methodology. The line between art and science, between intuition and analysis, began to blur. Watch this, Dev said one afternoon, gathering Maya and the alien observers. He had been working with a group of children from different countries, each bringing their own musical traditions to the archive. We found something cool. The children began to play, their different rhythms and melodies seemingly clashing at first. But as they continued, patterns began to emerge. The archive responded with a display of light and data unlike anything they had seen before. They're not just reading the archive, Professor Martinez whispered. They're dreaming with it. The holographic display erupted in a symphony of color and movement, showing images of worlds and civilizations long lost to time. But these weren't just recordings, they were interpretations, the ancient data filtered through the imagination of Earth's children. The archive isn't a library, Dev explained, his eyes fixed on the swirling patterns. It's more like a really big playground. Every civilization that added to it left their toys behind, hoping someone would come along who still remembered how to play. Maya noticed that some of the Zethari observers had begun to change. Their perfectly geometric forms were becoming more fluid, more organic. They were learning to embrace imperfection. We have been preserving knowledge, the first speaker acknowledged, but we had forgotten how to create it. Your children are teaching us how to dream again. As word of Earth's breakthrough spread across the galaxy, more civilizations began sending representatives, not their scientists or scholars, but their artists, their dreamers, their children. The Quantum Archive became a gathering place for those who sought to bridge the gap between perfect computation and imperfect creativity. One evening, as the facility quieted down, Maya found Dev sitting alone in the main chamber, playing softly with a new section of the archive. What do you see? She asked, watching the patterns dance in response to his music. Stories, he replied. So many stories. About worlds and people and ideas. But they're not finished stories. They're waiting for someone to come along and add their own chapters. Maya smiled, understanding finally what made humanity unique in the galaxy. They hadn't lost their ability to wonder, to imagine, to play. In a universe striving for perfection, they had remained perfectly imperfect. The archive isn't just about remembering the past, Dev continued, his fingers still moving across his tablet. It's about imagining the future. And everyone gets to imagine it differently. Above them, the crystalline ships of countless advanced civilizations glittered in the evening sky, each one drawn to Earth not by its technology or resources, but by its children's ability to dream in colors that perfect minds had forgotten existed. Tomorrow's Archive. 1 year after Dev Sharma first showed the galaxy how to play with its own history, the Quantum Archive had become something its creators could never have imagined. The facility, once a sterile temple of data storage, now pulsed with life and music from 100 worlds. Maya stood in her favorite observation spot, watching as children from Earth worked alongside young beings from across the galaxy. The Zethari ships had become permanent fixtures in Earth's sky, their crystalline structures now incorporating swirling, organic patterns inspired by human music. But they weren't alone. Vessels from countless civilizations hung in orbit, each one drawn to this unexpected renaissance of creativity. "We're ready for the integration," Dev announced, now 13 and somehow both older and younger than when this all began. He had grown taller, but his eyes still held that same sparkle of endless possibility. Today marked the culmination of a project that would have seemed impossible a year ago. The archive wasn't just being decoded anymore, it was being reborn. All participants are in position, Professor Martinez confirmed, his bank of holographic displays showing children and young beings positioned at similar facilities across the galaxy. Earth wasn't just receiving knowledge anymore, it was becoming a crucial node in a new kind of interstellar network. Dev took his position at the central interface, now modified to accommodate both his tablet and instruments from a dozen alien worlds. Around him, children from every continent sat with their own devices, each one ready to add their voice to the cosmic symphony. "Remember," Dev said to his fellow young musicians, "we're not trying to be perfect. We're trying to be ourselves." The first speaker of the Zethari Council moved forward, its once rigid crystalline form now flowing like liquid light. "We are prepared to receive Earth's contribution to the archive." Maya held her breath as Dev raised his hands. The moment his fingers touched his tablet, the chamber erupted in sound and light. But this wasn't just Dev's music, it was humanity's song to the stars. Traditional African drums merged with classical European symphonies. Chinese-era melodies intertwined with Indonesian gamelan orchestras. Native American flutes harmonized with Indian sitars. Each piece of music carried with it stories, dreams, and ways of seeing the universe that had never before been part of the galactic archive. The alien observers watched in amazement as human culture began weaving itself into the ancient database. But something unexpected was happening. The archive wasn't just accepting Earth's contribution, it was transforming it, combining it with knowledge from long-lost civilizations to create something entirely new. "Look!" Professor Martinez pointed to his displays. "The integration is triggering responses from dormant sections of the archive we never even knew existed." Maya watched as patterns of light danced across the chamber, telling stories that had been waiting millions of years to be heard. Stories of other young civilizations that had once stood where humanity now stood, adding their own songs to the cosmic chorus before evolving beyond the ability to play them. "It's a cycle," Dev explained, his hands still moving across his interface. "Every civilization reaches a point where they have to choose between perfect computation and imperfect creativity. The archive helps them remember why they need both." The Zethari Council members pulsed with understanding. Their society had chosen perfection, forgetting that their greatest achievements had come from embracing uncertainty. Now, through the eyes and ears of Earth's children, they were learning to find balance again. As the integration continued, messages began arriving from across the galaxy. Other developing civilizations, inspired by Earth's example, were discovering their own ways to communicate with the archive. Each one brought new perspectives, new ways of understanding the universe that perfect minds had overlooked. "We were wrong," the first speaker announced, its thoughts reaching everyone in the chamber. We believed the archive was a repository of knowledge from advanced civilizations. But it is more than that. It is a bridge between what we were and what we can become. Maya noticed tears in Dev's eyes as he played. "What do you hear?" she asked softly. "Everything," he whispered. "The archive isn't just showing us history anymore. It's showing us possibilities. Every civilization that adds their voice changes the song, and every change creates new dreams." The integration lasted for hours, as humanity poured its hopes, dreams, and imperfections into the galaxy's greatest repository of knowledge. When it was finally complete, the archive had changed. The perfect geometric patterns of advanced civilizations now danced with the organic rhythms of developing worlds. Order and chaos, perfection and creativity, ancient wisdom and new dreams, all flowing together in an endless dance of possibility. "What happens now?" Maya asked, as the chamber slowly quieted. Dev smiled, already starting a new sequence on his tablet. "Now we keep playing. The archive isn't finished, it's never finished. That's what makes it perfect." The first speaker moved to the center of the chamber, its form creating patterns that reflected both Zethari precision and human creativity. "From this day forward, Earth will be known as the Bridge World, the place where perfection remembered how to dream." Above them, the combined knowledge of countless civilizations continued its eternal dance, now moving to rhythms that echoed with human laughter and song. In teaching the galaxy's most advanced beings how to play again, humanity had found its place among the stars. And somewhere in the archive, in patterns of light and sound that would take generations to fully understand, the answer to the universe's greatest questions waited to be discovered, not by perfect minds, but by those still young enough to wonder, still brave enough to guess, and still wise enough to know that the most beautiful songs are the ones we write together.